Welcome to Talkback with Citizens Report. Today we have with us the head of the Guyana Rice Producers Association, Mr. Dharm Kumar Siraj. Thank you for spending some time with us today.
I'm happy to be here. Glad that
right.
you afford me this opportunity to be on your program.
Okay. Now, one of the burning issues in the rice sector right now is the whole issue with the Venezuela and Guyana rice deal.
Yes.
Can you shed some light on what is the current state of that deal?
Yeah, we have a contract in place for 2050, and that contract is worth about 113 million US dollars. It's basically 120,000 tons of paddy and 74,000 tons of rice going in 50 kg bags to Venezuela.
Right.
We have already shipped a significant amount of rice and paddy to Venezuela. The current situation is that the directives from Venezuela is to halt all shipment of both paddy and rice until further notice. Based on what was communicated to the Guyanese people and the farmers through the printed press, it would appear that the order was lifted.
Mm-hmm.
But my information is that that order has not been lifted in terms of hold until we are ready to take more rice and paddy. So once we have exported some rice and some paddy, we currently have about 300 containers. These are 20-foot containers lying around at the wharf, ready to be shipped to Venezuela. That's rice.
Right.
And we have about 3,000 tons of paddy in these 1-ton sack waiting also to be shipped. Vessels are supposed to be coming in, and we have a 1-year contract also with UBC, which is the shipping company that provides the vessel going into Venezuela. Farmers are not getting paid. Millers are not getting paid. They have not even received full payments for what was already supplied to Venezuela and what is on the wharf currently in Georgetown. That caused a ripple effect throughout the industry. Farmers throughout the 5 coastal regions have not been able to service their crop properly. They have not been able to service their machinery and equipment. As a matter of fact, one gentleman called me and said he has been unable to source adequate medication for himself because he is an elderly person. He suffered a stroke recently, and he said the non-payment is affecting his ability to get the type of medication he has to get to address his sickness. So that's how bad it is.
Right. So there is some uncertainty as to what is the exact state of the agreement.
There are a lot of uncertainty because we can read 2 things into this. One is that Venezuela is probably moving to terminate the contract, or 2, they probably they have moved now to rescheduling shipment. I want to believe the latter. That they have made some move to reschedule shipping of both rice and paddy going there. The rationale I can't fully understand because Venezuela do need our rice.
Right.
And it's a situation where under the Petro-Caribbean deal, they don't have to go into their pocket and pay for the rice and paddy that they supply, unlike other markets. So it works for them also. But I think what is happening currently between Guyana and Venezuela as it relates to their territorial claim is also having some kind of effect on this economic contract that we have been enjoying for the past 7 years.
Well, let's talk about the contract a little bit. Can Venezuela, it is a legally binding contract that says for 1 year we'll supply X amount of rice and paddy. Can they break that contract without some legal consequences?
Well, any contract can be broken by either party. There are exit clause, exit conditions, and it can be terminated by mutual agreement, or one party can simply, say that we're terminating. Now, based on the terms and conditions, let's say we go for termination. Based on the terms and conditions on which they would have terminated, those terms and conditions would have to be examined legally by the people with the expertise in that area, and then you can see compensation. Because termination of a contract, you can go for compensation if adequate reasons are not given. Of course, if it's terminated by mutual consent, then there's not a case. But any termination of the current contract is likely to be challenged by Guyana. So this is a worst case scenario for 2050. in the sense that we already have a signed contract, and like I said, it's valued 130 million US dollars, and we have started supplying it. So, like I said, either party can do anything, and then have to live with the legal consequences of it. And I'm certain Guyana would want to look at its options, because going to court, especially international court or whichever jurisdiction,
will take
some time and will also be very costly.
Of course. Now we have a situation where we're looking at the deal. There's some amount of, not controversy, but there is different stories to actually how this deal was negotiated.
Yes, it's clear in my mind that in 2009, because you're right, there are some people, I think one Durga is claiming among the farming community that he went and negotiated this Venezuela deal. And then recently I saw a man by the name of General Rahman. He also said he and Dr. Durga went and do this deal. So I don't know where they get that from. But they're just spreading lies as far as that.
But this is a government-to-government deal?
There is a government-to-government arrangement. I've seen some correspondence, email correspondence between those two gentlemen stating that they went and they negotiated the deal, and then General Rahman went to the extent of saying that then President Jagdeo took the deal away and all of that. But these are questionable characters in the industry. I think Turin Durga, almost every single one of his business partner or people he does business with either ended up in court or they ended up getting the short end of the stick. So people are reluctant to do business with this individual. And I saw in one of our daily newspapers some weeks ago that the court of Florida have an interest in Mr. Durga for some $20 million US judgment awarded by some other partner that he would have tried to shortchange. So this gentleman has a history of unscrupulous arrangement, and especially as it relates to do with business transaction. The fact of the matter is that President Jagdeo would have negotiated the trade of rice with later President Chavez at the UN forum as a side discussion. Earlier in 2009, an RPA delegation had met with President Jagdeo, then President Jagdeo, at his residence at State House. And I remember one farmer by the name of Frank Basudil did say, but Mr. President, why don't you ask Venezuela to take some of our rice under this Petro-Caribbean deal? But it must be stated clearly that we signed on to Petro-Caribbean in 2005. Rice was never a part of it. Right? So this notion of Petro-Caribbean is about rice is totally false.
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of Petro-Caribbean, because there is, the new administration did say that the Petro-Caribbean fund was empty, and there has been charges, allegations of mismanagement and some level of corruption. How do you respond to that?
Well, those charges were leveled against the rice board to justify their restructuring and firing of people there and asking people to resign. So I think it was a red herring in the sense that the rice board has absolutely no jurisdiction, no authority, no responsibility over the Petro-Caribbean fund. The rice board is a beneficiary in the sense that they get paid from that account for rice and paddy supply. So the Petro-Caribbean account basically is that Venezuela supplies oil to Guyana. Guyana pays for about 50% of it immediately. The other money is seen as a loan that is used for various projects with agreement of Venezuela. And that is why President Jagdeo had discussed with President Chavez that, look, can we use some of this money to pay for rice and paddy that we supply? And Venezuela agreed for that. Because the Petro-Caribbean Council of Ministers would ultimately have to agree for what this money will be used for. Because it's their money being held as a loan. The Hugo Chavez Senior Citizen Home in Antwerp was constructed using this money, Hope Canal, and some other projects that will bring about improved livelihood for people, which is the main reason why Petro-Caribbean was being initiated by Chavez, so as to have economic cooperation in the first instance, and then political cooperation with the Caribbean, and then further feeling to Latin America and all of that. So rice was not part of it. Rice became a part of it when then President Jagdeo discussed with Chavez. There were no other players. This is a government-to-government arrangement. And whilst we would have liked to see private millers supplying, Venezuela insisted that they're doing business with the government. That is why the rice board became a signatory to that contract itself. So what has happened is that this claim of mismanagement of the Petrocaribbean Fund or account by the now government and placing it the blame to Rice. But I've dealt with that matter, so it's totally untrue. Rice Board has no jurisdiction, no authority. They could not have mismanaged it. They don't even know where the account is and who's signatories and all of that. But it's an account that money comes in and money goes out. Because the idea is not to have money sitting there doing nothing. And there are various government projects that were earmarked upon to do that. And then rice became the major focus from 2009 up to now. And the Petrocaribbean account now, the money that comes in there will go to pay for rice and all of that. The fund would have been depleted by two ways. One is that for actual projects that are initiated by the government. And secondly, whilst we continue to take the same volume of oil, the value of that same amount would have been reduced because the price for oil came down. You know, oil at one time was around $114 per barrel. And then it came down to 55, 48, I think, and then it went up back to about 60 and so on. So we would have been taking on an average 5,000 barrels per day. When the price of oil was very high, you have a lot of money in the account. When you take 5,000 barrels per day and the price is half what it is, then you will only have half of that in the account. So in that sense, the account itself would have been receiving less money simply because the price for oil would have been reduced. So there's absolutely no truth in mismanagement, and like I said, the Council of Ministers, the Petrocaribbean Council of Ministers would have had to give an approval to the government of Guyana for any use of those funds because it's being held in an account that Venezuela has some jurisdiction over. Yes.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit more about the impact on rice farmers that the entire, well, there's been some changes. Uncertainty with the Venezuela rice deal. What are farmers experiencing right now?
Hardship, extreme hardship in some cases, and the government has a responsibility to maintain this contract. It's a government contract, a government-to-government contract. It's a one-year contract. So we always know that there's the likelihood that next year you might not get it. But it depends on your negotiating skills, it depends on your diplomacy, depends on your relationship with Venezuela. And once we signed this deal in 2009, 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, all these years, the government of Guyana has successfully negotiated new contracts, right? Because of, like I said, the skills that they possess at that time. I remember one time that then Minister of Agriculture, Dr. Leslie Ramsamy, was in hospital. And because of the crucial nature of this contract, we practically dragged him out of the hospital, took him to Venezuela, get the deal done, and then put him back in the hospital, right? Because that is how we see this thing as very important. And we talked to the Venezuelans, and you know, Venezuela, our position is that we want to make medium to long-term contract. Venezuela always maintain year-to-year contract because they will say that, you know, this thing might be good for this year, next year we might not want it, and that, and all of that. Because as a rice-growing nation, they want to up their production and their productivity too, to become self-sufficient.
And Guyana responded to that in terms of expanding our own markets. Yeah,
exactly. Guyana's been, I mean, we were selling to a few markets. Now we're selling to newer markets. Panama was an initiative by President Ramaphosa too, in broadening our frontier as it relates to the marketing of our rice. So it has always been like that with Venezuela. Every single year you go on Venezuela, say, well, you know, we might want rice next year, and then we said, but you know, we're giving you a good deal. Our rice is best quality. We have different technical cooperation too. We send paddy so that their mills are also active. We send our technical people to work with their milling technical people to adjust their mills because we have an extra long grain rice that the Venezuelan people are not beginning to like. So we use all these kinds of negotiating position to convince Venezuela that, look, Guyana rice is good for you.
Right, so when we started, the market share that Venezuela had, what was the size of that?
Well, because our production was just about 350,000 tons, our export was about 300,000 tons. Venezuela would have accounted for about 70%. 70% of total export. Now it's about 34, 35%. because our production of obviously
Has
increased, it
increased.
almost doubled,
Right.
right? So Venezuela now has moved from a position of being our largest market, our largest component of our export, about 75, 80%, to just about 35% of the total export. So correspondingly, there have been a reduction in the average price.
Right.
Because from position of being about 3/4, your high price market being 3/4 of export, your high price market now is about 1/3 of total export.
Right.
And your low price, so the average price is much lower than it was before. So the government of Guyana, then government PPP civic administration, always understand that, look, listen, if you don't go to Venezuela with your strongest negotiators,
Right.
with your best diplomatic skills, the likelihood of not having a renewal is always there.
It's all fair.
Because Venezuela can source cheaper rice from Uruguay, from the US. Because notwithstanding what is been happening between Venezuela and the US is still Venezuela's largest trading partner.
Right.
I think Venezuela is the 5th largest supplier of oil to the
Oil to
United
the
States. So they have very robust economic cooperation, notwithstanding the strained political relationship with them. So they have different options, options that might cost them less. But like I said, we sell our point. And one of the biggest selling point is that, listen, you don't have to take money from your pocket and give it to us.
That's the extra.
This is money that you're supposed to receive 20 years down the line. You're actually getting paid now.
No.
And they bought that argument. And we said, listen, of all your Petro-Caribbean partners,
Right.
we said that Guyana is the best example we can use.
Right.
And they agreed because their relationship with Nicaragua, for example, with Jamaica, and with the Dominican Republic as it relates to the Petro-Caribbean arrangement is not so good like with Guyana. And they always use Guyana as an example with the other countries.
Right.
And because of these points that we sell to them, we're always successful in getting the contract renewed.
Right. Now, all these factors considered, what can farmers be assured of, considering the state of the Venezuela rice deal,
Yes.
the increasing tensions between our countries over the territorial controversy? What is the takeaway for average rice farmers who are looking at their bottom line?
Yeah, well, I'm reading between the lines because I've been in this industry now for almost 3 decades. And sometimes when politicians speak, you gotta read between the lines. And I've listened to the minister a bit. I've read what the minister said. Minister of State, Minister of Finance, Minister of Agriculture. And reading between the lines, there are 2 things that are likely to happen. One is that we are already told that Venezuela is not going to renew for 2016, right? Secondly, we're told too that the amount of money in the fund, even if Venezuela had renewed, would have put some strain on the government of Guyana's ability to pay farmers for rice and paddy supply. So that's a different ballgame altogether. The industry got to prepare itself for some hard times because we have failed to renegotiate a new contract for 2016. The industry had to prepare for hard times now. And whilst political statements were made on the campaign trail by the same campaigner for AFCAP and Udurga and Jinnah, they were campaigning for the coalition, right? And they were promising farmers, vote for the coalition and you will get $6,000 a bag for paddy. At that time, we were struggling to maintain $3,000 a bag for paddy. Now, getting 100% increase or a promise of 100% increase, so a lot of farmers, looking at the RP and say, but basically coming down to rob farmers and all of that. The thing got even more ridiculous when Ramjatan, Minister of Security now, on the campaign trail in King Grove and in quarantine Borbies, he said that you can get $9,000 a bag for paddy. And he told farmers all over that, you got to vote for change, you got to vote for the coalition, and you will be able to get this. Now farmers have a mindset now to get double and triple what they used to get before. And now they're being told that you're likely to get half of what you used to get, or just a little bit more than half. So there's despair, disappointment, frustration, anger, and people are downright now hungry because they are not getting paid. Monday afternoon, I'll be having a meeting in Maikoni to address some farmers there at 4 o'clock about this situation. So this crop, the second crop or the autumn crop is already in the ground. It's showing vigorous growth. It looks really good, notwithstanding the heavy rainfall. It doesn't basically affect most of the rice cultivation areas. And we're going to have a bumper harvest. Having said all things being equal, some people, because of the price, might opt not even to harvest the rice. But we have this situation where farmers got to get paid now. Secondly, we have a lot of stocks in hand. All the mills, if they don't get rid of the stock, we will not be able to take in new stock. So that might put long lines at the mills, harvesters in the fields, and all of that. So the rice industry is in for some tough times. And I always believe if there is a will, there will be a way. And this new government have to demonstrate the will to deal with the problems that are facing the industry.
But let's go back to price a little bit. Last crop, what was the highest price paid to farmers?
Some farmers, very few, receive $3,200 per bag of extra A grade.
And then that's based on the grading, the extra A grade.
The extra A grade would have seen some farmers getting $3,200 per bag. Our PA, our seed growers, we pay them $4,000 a bag for paddy. But that's seed growers under contract and so on. So it got to be of exceptionally high quality. So we would have paid the highest price in terms of $4,000 per bag. At the commercial buying centers, $3,200 would have been the highest price. And it would have been a range from about 27 to 32. And some bad quality paddy getting $2,000 because of poor quality and so on. So I would say the average price paid would have been about $2,800 per bag.
And the difference now, if you're looking at 2015 spring crop?
Well, that would have been paid for the spring crop. For the autumn crop, the second crop coming in, we have lost the Venezuelan market. What is going to happen? The other markets are going to, play games with us now, knowing that we don't have the luxury of putting 200 are not going to be so good. And yeah, we're looking at a dramatic reduction in prices, and to such an extent, like I said, some farmers might opt in not to harvest, to go into additional.
And what is the repercussions of not harvesting?
Well, they will go bankrupt. Some millers will go bankrupt. The industry is going to constrict. We're going to probably enter this spring crop of 2016 with about half of what we're currently producing. So overall, we're looking at the rice industry.
Production and export.
Yeah, so this will have a severe impact on the economy. The minister, Winston Jordan himself, said rice is currently the largest foreign exchange earner for Guyana. It will not maintain that position. So overall, after the accomplishment of the last 2 decades, rice is going to start going down if the current situation prevails.
Well, let's shift a little bit politically. You are associated with the PPP. What would be the party's message to farmers?
Well, from that angle is that I think that the record will show that from 1992, October 5, the focus of the PPP administration was on developing the farming infrastructure, comprising mainly of drainage and irrigation and storage of water. These are the consultancies. So almost on a yearly basis, about 12 to 14 billion dollars used to be plugged into the drainage and irrigation infrastructure. Our entire cultivation area on the 5 coastal regions are below sea level, so that's critical. And then if you do an irrigated crop, you have to have some comfort that you'll have irrigation water available during dry season. So that is where the focus went into, drainage and irrigation and the conservancy, and then the farm to market road. So this kind of investment, and sea defense also, very critical, the road networks and all of that. So this kind of investment in the physical infrastructure saw Guyana moving from a position of importing rice in 1989 to more than tripling production, right? In 2014, export for the first time was 501,000 tons, right? Before that, that couldn't even come close to total production. 1990 was a fiasco. 1991, 92, you start seeing some improvement. So, political speaking, the will of the PPP administration found a way in enhancing agriculture production, livestock, other crops. They were talking about the 4 Ps, planting passion fruit, pumpkin, and peppers to enhance the crop sector, livestock sector. They established a new agency called the Guyana Livestock Development Authority. They had restructuring of National Agriculture Research Institute, the National Agriculture Research and Extension Institute. A lot of money was spent on the Guama Rice Research Station. Investments were made in human resources. We have a few people here with a PhD who are not even yet 40 years old in plant breeding, in entomology, in agronomy, and all of that. And currently there are other people studying. The extension service of the rice sector now is the best in this part of the world, and farmers responded. So there was the political will to enhance the agriculture infrastructure in Guyana. And like I said, if you have the will, a way will be found. And the interest of farmers was always there, to such an extent that, you know, farmers start to even abuse ministers sometimes. And this situation really, you know, was one where they didn't know how good they were.
Right.
You know,
So
and
it
they took
became
everything for granted.
It became an expectation.
Yeah, it almost became a way of life that minister respond to you at all times of the night and all of that and all of that. And that was what the PPP civic administration was about.
Right.
To, you know, basically be the
Foster
servant,
that kind of relationship,
be the
right.
servant of the farmers and the farming community, and enhance relationship with farmers organization and private sector organization that deals with rice and deals with farmers and agriculture on the whole. So farmers out there now have realized that the administration of the People's Progressive Party Civic was one that really had their interests at heart, and it was demonstrated in a physical way. You know, their involvement, the development of the infrastructure and so on, and you know, it left to be seen how this new government intends to deal with
Well,
this
the
situation.
argument can be made that this is a new administration, and they have to, you know, there's still a possibility that they may be able to prevent tough times from. Do you think do you think it's possible to prevent what you're saying as rough times for the industry ahead?
Well, as a government, I think it's in the administration interest to ensure the fallout is not felt too greatly, too badly by the farmers itself.
But it's possible.
It is possible.
Okay.
It is possible. And like I said, it left to be seen. Our government is intended or supposed, they're voted in to represent the interest, to promote the interests of the stakeholders, regardless of whether they supported you or not. It's a government for the country. And I would expect that the government, if they fulfill half of the promises that they have made, well then farmers don't have anything to worry about, even if they fulfill half of what they said that they will do. Half will be, you know, what we will be satisfied with. The fact of the matter, I don't think they'll be able to do it, because they made pronouncements that were not based on reality. And they were in fairylands, you know, talking about things that they were not knowledgeable about and seeking to make political mileage. They can correct that situation, you know, by you know, putting the interests of the farmers first and foremost. But that left to be seen.
Right.
I mean, there are a lot of things that can be done, and I think farmers and RPA will be looking at if the contracts will be terminated, they are lost, then there probably some claims will be made for compensation, because there was an expectation that this will be done based on pronouncements that were made. There's an expectation that you have a renewal of these of the contract, so people were planting because they become accustomed to that over 6-7 years. You know, so like I said, it left to be seen how things will unfold.
Has the RPA been engaged with the Ministry of Agriculture in the last couple of weeks?
Not formally. I myself have had one discussion as RPA General Secretary with Minister Holder, and I had called to indicate to him that I made a suggestion as what can be done in terms of Panama and Venezuela. I had dispatched an email to Minister of Finance Jordan about some thoughts about the situation in Venezuela, but we're still to be engaged formally with the Ministry of Agriculture. We are awaiting some sort of invitation to engage the Rice Producers Association. I mean, the RPA was around long before the PNC and long before the PPP.
Right.
So the RPA is not a creature of any political party that currently is around. The RPA is much older than any political party in this country.
But instead of waiting for for the ministry to extend an invitation, do you not think that the onus is on the RPA to say, okay, well,
the
we're here, let's
RPA,
talk. In light of what's happening, we're here, let's talk.
well, the RPA is currently doing countrywide consultation with its membership to more or less come up with a strategy as to how we deal with this new situation. And I have indicated to farmers from the different regions that we will be seeking an audience with the Minister of Agriculture, and I expect to bring farmers from all the regions to have a discussion with the minister. So if it is not initiated by the ministry before, then definitely the RPA will be initiating a process to seek worthwhile engagement with the Ministry of Agriculture and the Minister of Agriculture.
All right, so there you have it. There are rough times ahead for the industry, but the silver lining is that there can be interventions made by the current administration in engaging stakeholders in the industry. Mrs. Siraj, we thank you so much for your time, and we hope you can spend some more time with us soon.
Well, sure. I always like to discuss with our stakeholders, and the more people know, the better informed they will be, and they'll be able to analyze and make better decisions. So, thank you for having me.
All right, you're welcome.